What did civilians usually do when the front line reached their town or village? 1. Mass fleeing, evacuation. This was the most common reaction if people had time. Many civilians tried to escape before the fighting reached their area, especially if there were warnings. There were often long lines of refugees, families walking, using carts, or riding bicycles, carrying whatever they could. In Western Europe in 1940, during the German invasion, millions of French and Belgian civilians fled. This was known as the Exode. In Eastern Europe, huge numbers of civilians fled from places like Poland, Ukraine, and Russia, often in chaos and sometimes under air attack. 2. Hiding in basements or shelters. In places where escape was difficult or impossible, people hid in basements or makeshift shelters. In big battles like Stalingrad or Berlin, many civilians were trapped in their homes or underground, suffering from constant bombing, no water or food, and extreme danger. Some stayed because they hoped the fighting would pass quickly, or they simply had nowhere else to go. 3. Trying to cross toward the other side. In some cases, civilians tried to move toward the enemy lines, especially if they were afraid of the army that was retreating. For example, near the end of the war, millions of German civilians fled west to escape the advancing Soviet army, hoping to surrender to the Western Allies instead. 4. Forced evacuation. Some governments, like Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, forced civilians to leave certain areas. Sometimes civilians were also used for military work, or even as human shields, especially by retreating armies. What about the empty, destroyed towns we see in movies? Movies often show empty towns because civilians had already fled before the battle. Heavy bombing destroyed buildings and forced people to leave, or killed many. Armies often tried to clear civilians out of urban battle zones because they made fighting more dangerous. But in real life, in many cases, civilians were still trapped in the middle of the battle, scared, hungry, injured, and unable to escape.